In the last couple of weeks, I've been getting the most fun kind of mail, plant mail. So today I'm going to share with you some of these new varieties that I received. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to our garden. In the last couple of seasons, after I've been creating videos for almost 5 years now, I've started to get some offers for some trial plants to test out in my garden. And that happened this past winter. I was contacted by a couple of different plant companies offering to send me some plants to try out. And I accepted them, and it's always really exciting to get plant mail. So I thought that I could share these varieties with you. So let's go ahead and take a look. So over the winter, I had gotten an email from Terra Nova nurseries asking if I'd be willing to receive some of their sample plants. And of course I said yes, and I was excited to get these boxes in the mail a few days ago with some beautiful plants. Now, if you've been around my channel for a little while, you know that I absolutely adore coneflowers. And I was pumped to see that there was not one or two, but 4 different varieties of coneflowers in these sample plants. And this variety here looks very similar to the green twister that I've grown before, but it's called the Prima Aura Echinacea. You can see it has that pink purple center with the lime green tips. This one's about ready to open up, and you can see what that looks like. And then as they age, this is what they look like. They have a large bloom, and this variety gets to be, it looks like 13 inches in height, 20 inches in width, hardy down to -25 degrees Fahrenheit or zones 4 through 9. Now, all coneflowers want to be grown the same way. They like a well-draining soil and full sun. And some other really pretty ones. Look at this gorgeous one. So pretty. It's like orange with a little bit of coral in the center. And this one is called the Echinacea Delightful Tropics. That is a stunner. And this one gets to be also 12 inches in height, 16 inches in width, same hardiness, -25 degrees Fahrenheit, zones 4 through 9. And I'm not typically a fan of red, but I have to say, this one is beautiful. It fades to almost like a raspberry coloration, and it's one of those double scoop varieties. Look how pretty that is. So gorgeous. And this one is called the Delightful Garnet Echinacea. These are all perennial, and this one is a little bit shorter at 8 inches in height, 14 inches in width, and also hardy in zones 4 through 9. So pretty. I'm like pumped to plant these out in my garden. I got to find a spot for them. And this one looks like a yellow variety. It's called Princess Honey Echinacea. And I don't have any yellow ones, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty shade of kind of like a yellow orange color, kind of like a mango color, really. And this one is 10 inches in height, 12 inches in width, also hardy in zones 4 through 9. There are also a couple of annuals included. These are a type of fuchsia, and the name is, it's Phagelius Color Burst White. And you can see here, it has these like mini trumpet type blooms. I'm sure that the hummingbirds will love it. And they came in a shade of white, and there's also a rose variety right here. Same variety of plant, Phagelius Color Burst Rose. You can see that pretty rose coloration. And look at the beautiful foliage on this annual. This is Plectranthus, and the variety is called Nova Brilliant. Really pretty foliage, and then at some point it will throw up these small blooms. So let's look at the information. So Plectranthus Nova Brilliant Nova, and it gets to be 9 inches in height, 24 inches in width, so it has kind of a bushy growth habit. Great for containers, hardy to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, can be grown as perennial in zones 9 through 11, and it likes part shade to shade. So I'm going to grow that, I think, in a terracotta pot with that coloration. I think that's going to look really pretty. And then we have a few more perennials for part shade to shade. Look at this, some coral bells or heuchera, and they're actually in bloom. And you can see what the blooms look like. They have these sprays of what looks like baby's breath, and these really pretty colors of kind of like a coral peach with a little bit of cream. But look at the foliage on this. Now, these are plants that are being trialed, so you're either going to find them currently at your local garden centers and nurseries, or they will be soon. And this variety has the most beautiful ruffly foliage. Let me show you the name of it. It is called the Rosewood Heuchera by Terra Nova Nurseries. Now, Terra Nova is a grower, and so oftentimes when you see that name, they're growing these plants for nurseries and garden centers. I have seen these at independently run garden centers and nurseries. I've also seen Terra Nova plants at the Home Depot, and I actually have a couple in my garden. So this one, Heuchera Rosewood, gets to be 8 inches in height, 16 inches in width, hardy down to negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit or zones 4 through 9, but it has such a pretty deep burgundy coloration. And this Heuchera has so much dimension in the foliage. Look at that. And this variety is called the Redstone Falls Heucherella. So that is a cross between a Heuchera and a Tiarella. It's also a perennial, and this variety says that it's a ground cover, so it grows wider than it does tall. So 10 inches in height, 36 inches in width, and it is hardy down to negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit or zones 4 through 9. That is a real pretty one. And this one has more of a green coloration with a hint of pink. And this variety is called Pink Stardust Heucherella, also a perennial. And this one gets 6 inches in height, 12 inches in width. It's an accent plant, hardy to negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit and zones 4 through 9. It says sun to shade, and it likes moderate water. And then it looks like the blooms will be a pretty shade of light pink. So I'm actually going to have some fun planting these over in my Japanese maple garden, and maybe even some in this border right behind, because now that our trees are growing, we have a lot more shade. So it's been fun trying to plant some more shade combinations. And then the coneflowers are going to go in my front borders that are nice and sunny, and I think they'll be happy there. And the next set of trial plants that I received were from Must Have Perennials, which originally started as Blooms of Bressingham in the 1900s. And the goal of the organization was to work with breeders to bring top performing garden perennials to market. And one of the most popular perennials that you might be aware of that came out of this organization is the hardy geranium Roseanne. It's the top selling perennial in the world, and for good reason. It blooms for such a long time, and it has a beautiful bloom. And I have here a sport of that geranium, the Cranesbill Azure Rush, that is a new one that I'll be trialing in my garden. There's also another variety here called Cranesbill Blushing Turtle and a new hosta variety. So let's go ahead and read up on the Cranesbill Azure Rush. The geranium Azure Rush is a sport of geranium Roseanne with a more mounding habit. Uses for it are front borders, ground covers, containers, and hanging baskets. It's long blooming, has fragrant foliage, and is deer resistant. Has an approximate height of 18 to 20 inches. It spreads about 24 to 28 inches, and it is hardy in USDA growing zones 5 through 8 and blooms in summer and autumn. It likes sun and part shade. Has a really pretty kind of lavender light purple coloration. And Geranium Blushing Turtle is a trouble-free performer with fantastic garden presence, forming thick, impressive mounds. Blooms are 1 inch in diameter. They're great for mixed borders, ground cover containers. They're also long blooming and fragrant. And they get to be 24 inches in height, 36 inches in width, hardy down to a zone 5, and they bloom in summer and autumn. They like sun and part shade, and this one has more of a pink coloring to it. So I have just the place for these two beautiful new varieties of geraniums. I'm going to actually plant them in the garden bed that we have over in our hillside area where we're putting our new greenhouse, and I think those are going to look lovely in that space. I also received 3 of this new hosta variety. So this is called the Hosta Flower Show. It's a hosta hybrid. It wants to be grown in part shade to shade, like most hostas, right? They prefer shade. And it says that it forms a handsome mound of variegated foliage, but the white and lavender striped flowers steal the show. That must be really interesting. Typically, they're just a solid white or a shade of purple bell-shaped bloom, but this one is striped. They are also fragrant and an excellent specimen foundation or border plant. Grows well in fertile, humus-rich, well-drained soil, and it gets to be 18 inches in height, sends up its blooms in summer, and hardy to a negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 40 degrees Celsius, or zones 3 through 9. I also received some mail from my friends over at Proven Winners. I'm actually doing a presentation on hydrangeas for my local garden club, and I had reached out to my contact over at Proven Winners for the color choice shrubs that I've worked with before, and asked if they had any literature on hydrangeas, and they had this wonderful catalog. It's Hydrangeas Demystified. And they sent them to me along with some other goodies for the presentation, which was so generous. So this pamphlet they actually have as a PDF on their website. I will link it below for you to check it out if you're interested. But it's such a helpful handout. It shows here which hydrangeas do you grow, and it goes through the different characteristics of each type of hydrangea, as well as some information on color, growing tips. And then on the back side, there's even a chart, a flow chart that shows why isn't my hydrangea blooming, and you would just follow it down and it gives you different scenarios that you can review as to why your hydrangea might not bloom. So I thought this was excellent, and I was so excited to receive these as a handout for my presentation. But they didn't just send that. They also sent a stack of these, the Gardener's Idea Book, which some of you might get in the mail, but if you don't, you can sign up for it on the Proven Winners website. It's free. They also have a PDF version that you can download. And look at these, some stickers, some hydrangea stickers, so cute, and some Swedish dishcloths. It's a reusable paper towel, kitchen sponge. They're washable and biodegradable, and they feature the Let's Dance Skyview continuously blooming hydrangea. So cool. Look at that. My garden club is going to be so surprised by these little goodies. And then they also sent, look at this, 2 trays of hydrangeas. These are quart size, so they're little, which will be perfect to give away in the raffle that we'll do at the end of the presentation. And they're easy to plant because they're little. So we got 8 of the tiny quickfire. I grow the original quickfire in my garden. It is gorgeous, but it's pretty large at 6 to 8 feet tall and wide. And this is a tiny version of that. So the tiny quickfire hydrangea is the smallest panicle hydrangea on the market. It's also the earliest to bloom each season, and the blooms fade to this gorgeous shade of pink, really pretty. So this tiny quickfire is hardy in USDA growing zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be 1.5 to 3 feet tall and 2 to 3 feet wide. So such a great size. You can tuck that in anywhere, and because it's a panicle, it can take more sun. And the other variety we got was the Let's Dance Skyview, which is a reblooming big leaf hydrangea or macrophylla type. I actually just recently planted 3 of these in my own garden, and I'm excited to see how they do. And this one is hardy in USDA growing zones 4 through 9, also hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be 2 to 3 feet tall, 2 to 4 feet wide. And it wants sun to part sun. So because it's a macrophylla, I would say morning sun is best on this one. So we have 8 of each to raffle off at the end of the presentation. And I want to thank Proven Winners for being so generous and sending out this material and these plants for me to use for our garden club hydrangea presentation. And I will link the PDF for both the Hydrangeas Demystified catalog as well as the Gardener Idea Book down below if you want to check that out. Look at this catalog. It's so beautiful. It shows you every single type of hydrangea, the zones, the sizes, so a really great resource. Well, I hope that you had fun exploring some of these new varieties. Let me know which one of these interested you the most, and how do you feel about getting plants in the mail? I always think it's really exciting. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.